Oh boy, does that feel good to be live and physical presence after all these years. Now, over the next 30 minutes, we'll be talking about the results of a very interesting survey, the key findings. And we talk about the key findings because it's both quantitative and qualitative. You will find it available in due time. We'll let you know through the AmCham social network and the media, and we'll talk about the results, and we'll give the floor to two representatives of the young generations, to two students, to hear about what they think about this very important topic. Now, their names, let me look at my cheat sheet. It's Mrs. Dorothea Limneu from the DRI, American College of Greece. She has a bachelor in enterprise management, and Mrs. Dionysia Zoupa, who works with the public administration, who is actually studying at the public administration department in Panion University. Mr. Krystallis, Dr. Krystallis, you have the floor to give us a few bits about the identity of the survey. Right, well, thank you so very much for the invitation and the opportunity you present us with actually showcasing this survey we conducted on the occasion of this 20th anniversary conference. The title, as was already mentioned, is What Greeks Think About Sustainable Development. I should like to thank, first of all, the scientific committee of the American College for implementing this survey, the Centers of Excellence, the Office of Public Affairs, the Center of Excellence and Sustainability, who, as I said, had the scientific oversight of this survey. Regarding the identity of the survey, the collection was carried out last June. The sample of the participants was 1,039 households all over Greece. We collected information via online, filling in a questionnaire, and of course the sample was stratified by age between 18 and 64 years of age, and it is representative of key demographic features of the Hellenic population. So we can be absolutely certain that it is a survey that gives perfectly reliable results, at least as far as this sampling is concerned. I would like to give a very fast snapshot of the key findings, and then we can move on with our discussion. Now, the main findings may be looked at as follows. Well, sustainable development is almost entirely identified with the environment. So it's E versus S and G. So Greeks identify everything that has to do with E is not so much about proper responsibility and justice, which means that Greek citizens identify themselves mostly to environmental ESG targets rather than social or corporate governance related ones. So unavoidably, the opportunities and chances that arise according to the Greek citizens' opinion on entrepreneurial activities of sustainable development have all to do with the environment, as we will talk about later. But when the question comes regarding what they would like to see more on behalf of the companies in our country, the answers relate more to social justice and proper governance and much less with the environment. So we'll see that here there's a bit of a contradiction, I should say. The result is that yes, well, citizens do reward green initiatives, they do reward entrepreneurship and the sectors that produce responsibly regarding the environment. And as we'll see at the end, with a very small but important detail, they appear much less willing to pay more to purchase green products. I think that this would be a good time to kick things off. Right, well, the President did talk about earlier about the development and the evolution of the terms. We started with the term CSR, then we had sustainable development, sustainability. I represent an educational institution. Our goal is to train young people and educate them. We'll hear what they have to say later on, but also the society as a whole. regarding the new data and the new evidence we have, the solutions and the things we need to participate in order to deal with the issues we understand and realize are happening around us. But have we been perfectly understood? Do we know that everyone understands, even the last citizen understands when they hear corporate responsibility, what that term entails, or sustainable development? We have the three pillars. We have the environment, we have society, we have the financial element as well. But has this been understood, felt and fathomed by public opinion? Well, it's clear that when we're talking about definitions, we need to approach the issue, the subject, on behalf of the recipient of the message. We may be connoisseurs, and we know very well, and we know that three components of sustainability coexist. But as the survey showed, for Greek citizens, sustainable development is primarily the environment. And words that have to do with any form of green development, ecology, recycling, renewable energy sources, and so on and so forth. So from the flip side of the social viewpoint, no, we're not on the same page. So we still have a long way to go. We to train ourselves and everyone else on exactly where we are, what we're doing and what our role is. That is true. Brilliant, lovely. So we wanted to see whether the consumers know the terms, know that sustainable development has to do with the environment, and we still have a long way to go about the other pillars. But is it enough for the citizens to know the issues that are handled by sustainable development, or what issues sustainable development is called upon to give solutions? Is it enough? Is there participation on behalf of the citizens in problem resolution? Or is it that we will pass the buck on to someone else and do that and not assume personal responsibility? Is that the case? Well, obviously, after knowledge, the next question is, what do those who are in the know do? What do they do? So we try to gauge and measure the personal contribution and the degree of participation. It was a scale ranging from 0 to 10. 0 was none at all, 0 degree, and 10 was absolutely. And the average interest was approximately 6 out of 10, which is rather, well, lukewarm, if I may use this term, or at least this is our explanation. And this is due to the fact that only 4 out of 10 appear, or at least say, that they do wish to contribute, with the rest exhibiting a degree of interest that is much lower than that. So we should probably stop coming to find you and introducing the lives of society new terms, and more focus on how to put these things into practice and into action, what we are talking about. We live in a society in which we perceive the problems around us. We hear at an increasing frequency from lay people or from simple people, everyday people who ride a cab, for instance, that the term climate crisis, financial crisis, social problems is being tossed around. One would imagine that we all share the same beliefs. We all understand, realize and see around us the same things. Is that the case? Is that true? You're quite right. Now, like most of us in this whole room know, is that the social survey shows what the most trends are showing in general, and this is what we do, what we did in our survey. It's the results from 1,000 households in Greece. If we dig a little deeper, we will see that in this ensemble we have a lot of different perceptions. If we performed a statistical analysis and found 5 different types of Greek citizens. Here you can see the so-called deniers, who are approximately 1/4 of a society. So 25% of the Greeks we dubbed deniers, because they are on the flip side of what we're discussing now. They are people who exhibit the lowest possible interest in issues of sustainability. There can be all sorts of opinions heard from this part of society, that they can't find green products, that they're not of comparable quality. It is a publicity stunt. I don't believe it. It is not about me. I don't really trust them. Okay, I don't know if we can see the next slide. Right, brilliant. So they say that I have problems that are of much more concern than the environment to me. And even if a party had a political environmental agenda, I wouldn't vote for them, and I believe that environmentally green products are more expensive, which is why 25% of our society have these numbers, and the numbers of the society overall are lower than what we would wish. Does this mean that these people know half the truth? Does it mean that all they know is just the basics and do not know any details? What is the problem? What seems to be the problem? Well, we're talking about a group of people who have the socio-demographic profile we would expect. They are people of slightly lower educational level. It's mostly men than women. They're mostly residents of Athens as compared to the rest of Greece. And they're people who don't believe in a purpose. You can see here on the slide, we have included a long list of actions, environmentally friendly actions. And you can see in the red line the deniers, and in the green line it's their opposite numbers, the supporters. So there is a constant divergence of the two lines. You can see that they are 2 points apart. You see what the supporters do is to reduce food waste, which is very encouraging, and recycling. And you see that even in these parts, in those issues, deniers are much less involved and engaged, and it might be interesting to see some big differences. I mean, I worry about plastics, single-use plastics. You can see the difference. When I buy something, I look for environmentally friendly companies, and something that is very important and we should probably comment on is that when it comes to volunteering and active participation, both groups, you can see that they have almost convergence. The only thing they converge is to the point to which they would like to volunteer. And you will see later on how much they would pay more for green products. Which means that in general, Greeks, regardless of whether they're deniers of the environmental issue or not, they do not express an active interest of participation. So it is the social responsibility. I think we have learned as a society, we have not learned as a society, that we can all contribute, we can all do something to resolve the problem, and I expect everything from the government or the businesses or anything. Yes, quite right. You can see that all this it's a bit controversial in the eyes of our society. Another beloved term that's entered into our life is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SVAs, the SDGs. And we try to see to what extent our society, this civil society, has accepted the Sustainable Development Goals, how much we appear to be on the same page as far as achieving those goals is concerned. The Sustainable Development Goals need to have all the things dealt with the same way, to have the same gravitas, to share the same importance, and to be interlinked, to have an interaction, interconnection. in being able to respond to the crucial questions. How does that pass on to the society? How much is it accepted by society? Right, well, as a result of the identification of sustainable development with the environment in Greece, the SDGs that are environment linked, you can see them on the graph in green, are the goals in which there is a clear divergence between the deniers and the supporters, as we saw earlier. When we leave the discussion of the environment and we talk about social justice or corporate governance, we see that the divergence between them starts to fade. And towards the bottom, when we talk about equality of the genders, the sexes, peace, justice, strong institutions, high quality education, we will see that there is this V shape, because at the base of the V, both viewpoints in the society, although they're opposite one another in environmentally development related issues, they converge. So we still have a long way to go regarding the understanding and the weight, the gravitas and the importance all three dimensions have on sustainable development.
A lot of work for us in the academia. We have this role to play. Another issue that emerged and that this survey studies and emerged lately with the Ukraine war, the energy crisis, all that, as it has been said before, this hurdle in our course towards green energy. How do you perceive the relation between the low life standard or in issues related with the financial crisis? What is your perception? The issue of sustainable development, how will it be dealt with? Where are we left in our effort to solve environmental problems or other social problems? We've heard the term, for instance, that if I have nothing in my pocket, if I have no money, if I cannot pay my gas, well, it's I will definitely not be turning towards IS or I will not be fighting for the environment. Well, the way we see things, there is a standardized relation of poverty with the environment, but I will elaborate on that. We wondered and we asked to what extent the interviewees thought that the poverty is a cause, but also the result of environmental crisis. And you see that 62% of Greeks agreed intensely that indeed poverty and environmental degrading are two sides of the same coin, are interrelated. Of course, we know that environmental problems are not only problems of the developing world, the other way around, I would say. We see that the wildfires or the erosion and the floods are problems of the developed world. Perhaps this is a wishful thinking, a way to do away with our responsibilities when we say that poverty is interrelated with environmental problem, that perhaps we're not directly concerned, because whenever there's a poor guy, there lies a bad fate. So let us see more difficult aspects having to do with responsibilities, having to do with the role of the main influencer, who is, of course, the consumer, and what citizens expect from companies, from the state. Therefore, the first question that we raised was addressed to the consumers. To what extent in the last year they avoided buying products from companies which had a very bad attitude, either vis-à-vis governance or environmental issues or whatever. Yes, the so-called boycotting approach, if we would say. Yes, this definitely regards national economy and companies. I must remind you that with blue we have set the goals related with social justice, with red we have governance, and with green we have the environment. So with this, on this scheme of colors, we see that Greek citizens as consumers have boycotted to a large extent, more than 50%, companies that have shown some form of non-responsible attitude on issues of social justice vis-à-vis the employees, first of all, child labor, behavior to animals, but also profiteering, violating safety and hygiene, which paradoxically is not number one, and various financial activities having to do with wars, with interests against the national interests. And somewhat at the end of the list, in the boycotting, we also see the environment. So we have here the paradox that sustainable development is the environment, but when I am considering my attitude as a consumer, what I'm mostly interested in is social justice, without interrelating, however, social justice with sustainable development. It is interesting also to view the age groups. We'll see with blue 25-34, and you don't see two colors in the first aspect because the two colors coincide. Therefore, the two extremes of the age groups coincide vis-à-vis the attitude to employees. Now, vis-à-vis national interests, we see people are not that much sensitized, and quite indicative of all the replies is that things that are nocive to the environment are not to be excused by the younger generation. The older generations are more lenient towards that, and this is quite optimistic. I believe that social justice is true, bears no age gap. Regardless of generation and age group, we see that Greek citizens, as Greek consumers, demand a very responsible behavior vis-à-vis social justice and governance. We also see boycotting against companies that come from enemy countries, especially vis-à-vis the older consumers, but also issues of environment is an issue which is more at heart for the young generation. So we can deduce that this is a crystal clear and very optimistic message that Generation G is definitely more sensitive vis-à-vis the environment. Now we're running out of time, so let us come to another aspect to the responsibilities of big companies, because we are here to give solutions to the big problems. So let us view this question. Let us see what are considered to be the responsibilities of big companies vis-à-vis sustainable development. Yes, the question is, what do Greek citizens believe that companies should do so as to contribute? And you see a mixture of all colors. Therefore, all three fields of sustainable development are included in their perception. The first three actions regard the environment, corporate governance, and social justice, the creation of new jobs in green entrepreneurship, development of new technologies, and securing parity of genders in the workplace. You see on the right here that we see women in the replies. Women systematically are far more fervent advocates of the responsibility of companies to contribute in all those fields, and in some aspects also reflecting their experiences perhaps, because they sustain far more gender parity in the workplace and greater transparency vis-à-vis the logistics, the supply chain. Now, where do we lie vis-à-vis the opportunities for sustainable entrepreneurship? What are the fields that seem to be more promising? All fields that were included in the research show high percentages, higher, of course, to entrepreneurship directly related to the environment, organic cultures, recycling, and so forth, because what the Greek perceives as such is the environment, that is, including also photovoltaic, the production also of local products by small cottage companies, cottage industry companies, which is very goes hand in hand with the economic paradigm of the agricultural production in the country. Well, nice. So it could be a major issue. The state, but I have to be very concise and quick. The state, to what extent does it support SMEs, especially? Because bigger companies have great opportunities to do things. Well, we were not original here. What we all would expect. On average, the Greek citizen has a perception, lies at 4, ranks the state at 4. That is very, very low. The Greeks do not believe that the state really supports sustainable development. So there's a great room for improvement there. Now, beyond also the states, we must mention the great role the state plays on the course of Greece. So there's a great debate to be done there. So the trust to the institutions. Whom do the Greeks trust vis-à-vis environmental issues and their solutions? Again, no originality here, or perhaps there is originality. We do trust technology. I had the impression that we were technophobic as a society. It seems that not. Scientific knowledge. Civic society comes as number 3 with ambivalent results. Therefore, there is an ambivalent attitude and quite low rate of trust to the state, to economy bodies, unfortunately, and the political parties, of course, which rank last, as it happens in many other surveys. So technology and science, of course, helped in coming out of the pandemic, so we would expect that. And the last question, so is to give the floor to the young generation. What do Greeks believe vis-à-vis the companies observing certain perspectives of development? Indeed, there's a great spectrum of activities vis-à-vis the private sector that Greek citizens do support. For instance, the fact that we should buy and support such kind of companies, that it is absolutely legitimate, and this is very interesting, that it is absolutely legitimate for companies that treat the environment respectfully, they should have additional gains. Therefore, there is a debundling between responsibility and profitability. And vis-à-vis the last finding, that it is not that Greeks are not willing to pay additionally, despite the support to green entrepreneurship. This we can explain because we must have in mind that there is a part of negators. Therefore, 1 out of 4. Therefore, this is what mitigates this rate and drops it. We are certain there's a great part of society that shows also increased willingness to pay a dividend, pay higher for companies that are environmentally sensitive. Thanks a lot. We look forward to further findings of this survey. Now we will address and turn to the younger generation, the leaders of the future, as we usually call them, to have a first comment. What is that gave them joy in these findings? What was of concern? Or what does the young generation consider as most important? Good afternoon. First of all, who would like to mention to the main constituents of sustainable development that there's the notion of needs, that is fulfilling the basic needs, and of course the notion of limitations set by technology and social organization concerning environment at large and how we'll be acting now and in the long term. A main reason are the opportunities of development that can be created through this approach. I consider extremely important to point out that we are at an era where the European Union is mainly at the levels of biodiversity and the protection of ecosystem, and therefore both the programs and actions that want to attribute to companies, both of the private and public sector, they will mainly put their trust in those companies that we will think of the impact their action will have on the environment, both for now and in the future, as they will be operating over the next decades.
Now, the integration of principles of sustainable development in entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial strategy creates not only innovation, but also development and evolution in these companies, and growth, of course, because there is an inextricable link between the environment and the companies.
Furthermore, I would like to point out that beyond the aspect of companies, it is very important to put the emphasis on social indices, that is, for people to be interested and consider seriously this issue of social development must feel that there is equality, training, and social mobility. So as for this whole aspect, to help them boost their morale so as to further get involved with sustainable development.
I should also like to say that I consider that if everyone, each person understood and was aware of sustainability in general, they could undertake small activities every day and become and have a much bigger result, because when many people together make small actions, the result is magnified and multiplied.
Warmly thank you. Everything has been extremely interesting. Thank you. If I may, let me point out that the results of the survey of interviewees of your generation exist. There is 18-24 age bracket, and it will be interesting to see what you said indeed is reflected in this survey. Thank you.